Good evening. On behalf of Hourglass and our sponsors, and you see the list of sponsors in the back of the program, and we appreciate their support, we welcome you to the 2014 Hourglass Educational Forum. Over the course of the past 4 years, we have strived to provide the public with important information regarding public education. The information hasn't always been pleasant. As you know, we projected several years ago significant cuts in funding and its impact it would have on our schools. The cuts were made. Our schools indeed were greatly impacted. There's no doubt about it. Lancaster County schools are facing tremendous financial challenges that will affect students' learning as a direct result of reduced staffing and funding. It will get worse without dramatic legislative reforms in our legislature that address the unaffordable pension system and the restrictive mandates that deny public schools the flexibility to create their own solutions. But that's not why we're here today. Despite the continuing economic crisis facing our schools, there's some good news. Both the federal government and the state are committed to early childhood education with additional money. The money designated for preschools in the state of Pennsylvania, according to the 2014-15 budget, is $241 million, the largest budget increase of anything in the state budget for the proposed year. We are excited about this increase in proposed funding for early childhood learning, and we recognize the importance of investing these monies wisely. Early childhood education, done well, can make a major difference in students' academic accomplishments throughout their life. Money is necessary, but it's not the end-all. Content and deliverability are critical elements in determining the overall effectiveness. There is much we can learn from forward-thinking organizations that have set creative and educational standards for teaching children worldwide. Do you know the way to Sesame Street? Hourglass is fortunate to have Dr. Michael Levine, the founding director of the Joan Ganz Cooney Center at Sesame Workshop. For 50 years, this iconic enterprise has been the innovative force in early childhood education. Their work is constantly changing and always cutting edge. In addition to Dr. Levine, our program entitled Advancing Children's Learning in the Digital Age will include some exciting local efforts that are successfully taking place in our schools. Smart new initiatives that are responding to today's challenging needs. To introduce our first speaker, I'd like to recognize Sid Marlin, past president of Hourglass. Sid?
Thank you, Monty, and welcome again to all of you. This is a very complex series of presentations tonight, and the title of this is Advancing Children's Learning in the Digital Age. You don't see a lot of children up here, so we may have some times when we get Child Jennifer up to help us as we go through this fairly sophisticated series of presentations tonight. Well, I also want to announce that everything you see today, WITF is covering tonight. There will be clips available on their site, their education portion of their website on Friday. They're tweeting. We've got about 6 tweeting things. Hashtag Sesame Digital, hashtag Ed Lancaster, and of course, those of you who missed Dr. Levine on Smart Talk yesterday can pick him up again on WITF's website from their archive. Last fall, as Hourglass was reviewing prospective themes for this forum, we became aware of an educational initiative with increasing attention at national, state, and local levels, school readiness. Classroom learning theory and traditional pedagogical approaches become strained when some kindergartners have tablet mastery and 3 years of educational apps, and others have never held a book or pencil. We'll hear about both tonight. What should be the fundamentals for school readiness? This is clearly a social, economic, and societal challenge. We are delighted that one of the gentlemen who brought this to our attention agreed to speak with us today, Mr. Patrick Jinks, a 20-year United Way professional and for the last 2 years, President CEO of our United Way of Lancaster County. Patrick serves on United Way Worldwide National Professional Council and is adjunct faculty for their Center for Community Leadership. The United Way network across the country holds school readiness up as a top collective priority. Previously, Patrick helped develop a major multi-million-dollar system initiative that saw double-digit kindergarten readiness improvement in just 2 years. United Way of Lancaster is launching a first-of-its-kind cause campaign around school readiness this spring, and we're excited to hear more about it today. Please welcome Mr. Patrick Jinks.
Thank you, and good evening. So, since this is about the digital age, and we have those Twitter things going on, we're going to have some fun with that. So first, I would like, can someone do me a favor and turn on the house lights a little bit up? And could I get everyone to stand to their feet for a moment? And let's get energized just a bit here. While you're standing, let me just say a huge thank you to the Hourglass Foundation, number one, for putting on this forum, number two, for holding up this issue in the community, number three, for inviting me to come and be able to share even a small part of the program tonight. It's a huge honor. We have a big task ahead of us to prepare all of our children for success in life. And we can and must do it. Yes? No, good. That was an easy one. That was a softball. Everybody hold up your hand. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Everybody do this. Count with your fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Digital age. Those are digits. All right, those are your digits. Think about that for a minute, because I get to talk a little bit about that archaic old thing we call a book. So I loved the setup, the fact that we're going to be talking about technology, we're going to be talking about current tools, we're going to be talking about future tools. Had a great opportunity to spend a little bit of time with Dr. Levine earlier this afternoon, and I loved his terminology around bundling. The idea that one solution is not sufficient. It's necessary, but it takes a number of strategies to make this all work. So just real quickly, just to kind of do something, I'd like for you each to find a partner really quickly. Just one, you just need one partner. So everybody pair up real quickly. Person next to you is fine. Got it? This was fun. All right. Here's what we want. Everybody hold up your hand again. Look your partner in the eye. And on the count of 3, you're going to give your partner a high five. Everybody's done a high five, right? Well, that was good, except we haven't counted to 3 yet. Okay, children, here we go. Look your partner in the eye, hold your hand up, get ready, and on the count of 3, and don't sit down when you're done with this. Ready? 1, 2, 3. High five. Now, I'd like for you now to hold that high five against your partner's hand there, and I'm going to take a picture of it. Hold on. All right. You can be seated. Thank you very much. Now, he's already run the clock down here on me, so I'm going to hurry. Trust me, I will get done on time. How many of you, did any of you retweet Ellen DeGeneres' photo from the Oscars the other night? You know that set the record for the most retweets, right? Okay. Well, we're going to, what is it? Hashtag Ed Lancaster and hashtag Sesame Digital. Okay, so for you, let's just break Ellen's record, right? We can do that, right, here in Lancaster County? Yeah, we can try. I'm definitely going to tweet this out, this photo of high five. So you see behind me the high five campaign for every child. Coming this spring, April 17th to be exact, happens to be National High Five Day, who knew? But on April 17th, we're launching a 5-week campaign for school readiness on a very specific product. We're not trying to sell the whole strategy set with this campaign, but we are doing one thing that everyone can be a part of. And what we're doing, there are, at our last count, and some of you have a more updated number on this, but at our last count, 35,521 children in Lancaster County under the age of 5. 35,521. Our goal is to generate a high five, at least one high five, for every single one of those children. And what we're calling a high five, in addition to the slap of the hand and a celebratory, is a $5 bill, or a $5 check, or a $5 credit card, or a text to give. There's going to be lots of different ways that people can contribute to this. We know that a lot of people are going to give a lot of high fives, but everybody can give at least one. And if we get at least one high five for every one of the 35,521 children in the county below the age of 5 at our last count, we will show the world and ourselves, and most importantly, our children, how important they are to us and how committed we are to ensuring their success. The first question we get on that is, what do my $5 do? What does my high five accomplish? Well, we are going to put together a program that will deliver a book, a brand new, hardbound, age-appropriate book, mailed to the home of children under 5, for the families that sign up for it, which, by the way, eligibility is wide open on it. You got a child under 5, you're eligible. We are absolutely going to be looking and targeting those ones that we feel like need this program the most. But the idea is that these children, if we are able to raise the goal that we're trying to hit here, well, the more we raise, the more children we can help. Let's put it that way. But the idea is they get a book mailed to their home once a month until they turn 5. Now, research, I heard the collective, oh, that's great. Research, as everyone in this room probably knows, and some of you better than I, kids who read at home do better in school. Kids whose parents are engaged with them in their learning and their reading do better in school. So again, this is one piece of the strategy. It's for us kind of, throwing down a gauntlet and saying, hey, everybody needs to be a part of this. And it's putting a product in the hands of kids that every single one of us in this room and everybody outside this room can support at some level. So be on the lookout for it. It also will involve, stay on the lookout for this, on 5/5, on May 5th, we will be gathering folks in Lancaster County together to set a Guinness World Record. And it involves high fives. And that's all I'm going to say tonight. But be on the lookout for it. Be a part of it. You want to be a part of history. And more important than the Guinness record, which is just basically a public stance that says we're doing this, more importantly is the support of the campaign. So if you wanted to learn more about it, call us at United Way. We can tell you all you need to know. Be on the lookout for it. April 17th, it'll run through May 22nd, and we can do this. 35,521 high fives, that's about $177,000. That gives us a great launch to this program, okay? It's $30 for the entire year, or 6 high fives, takes one child through the whole year, to give you an idea of how impactful you can be and how efficient this program is. So I will close with that. Every time I see a big backhoe, these little cranes that dig into the dirt, every time I see one of those, I think of a little bird. And the reason I do that is because I will never forget the earliest book I can remember reading or having read to me by my mother was a book called Are You My Mother? Who remembers that book? Every time I see one of these backhoes, I think some little bird's out lost looking for his mother, and that could be it. Some of us, I don't know, may not be able to remember our last book, but I like to remember my first book because I will never forget how that book makes me feel. But I had the security, and I had the support system, and I had the family, and I had the book. We got to make sure every child has access to those opportunities so that they can succeed. So I just want to say thanks again for inviting us and letting us be a part of this, and we are absolutely looking forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you.
The little engine that could. I'm 20 years younger than Patrick. Older. I keep talking younger. Advancing digital technology. Oh, gosh. Do I go now, Jen? Yeah, okay. It would be an understatement to say that what Joan Ganz Cooney and her colleagues launched in 1969 has had a revolutionary impact on both the educationally served and underserved and the very medium of television. There are very few activities short of breathing that I feel confident that everyone in this room has experienced. Sesame Street. 7 years ago, Mrs. Clooney, at almost 80 years of age, well aware of the changing media and technology landscape of the 21st century, saw the need to address the challenges of educating children beyond the enduring role of Sesame Workshop. The Joan Ganz Cooney Center, called by some a Think and Do Center, is a pioneer in supporting research into early childhood, educational content delivery and technology, collaborating with institutions, scholars, media producers, tech companies, and policymakers. The center's efforts hinge on the central question: how can digital media help children learn? Hourglass spoke with Mrs. Cooney last fall and outlined our hopes for this forum. She said, whereas she doesn't travel to speak any longer, she had the perfect person for us. You have a brief bio of Dr. Levine in your program and can learn much of this extraordinary man online. His rich background in early childhood education at the corporate, school, and global public policy levels speaks for itself. His passion is to build a lasting educational bridge between home and school. A warm Lancaster welcome. Dr. Michael Levine.
Wow, so kind. Really nice to be here. Hi, everybody. Sid, thank you so much for that warm welcome. I'm not through with you. I have something else to say about you. And Patrick, you know, I didn't know about the high five. And I want to say that I'm inspired by the high five. And since I'm from out of town and won't be here for 5-5, I just want you to know that I want to make a contribution of a double nickel of high fives to you. So you have $55 from me for the high five campaign. So thank you very, very much. Let me get at what I'm supposed to talk about as opposed to what Sid has over here. It's a really, really good introduction, though, Sid. So I've had a few, how shall I put it, tutorials on how to say Lancaster. I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. It is such a pleasure to be in Lancaster today, and an honor to be speaking at a convening organized by the Hourglass Foundation. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And by Sid Marlin III. Sid's family's made so many meaningful contributions to this community, of course, but I'm not sure that you all know about the giant contribution, the big birdian contribution that his family has made to our nation. Sid's dad, many of you probably know, but some of you may not, was the U.S. Commissioner of Education in the early 1970s during a pretty tumultuous time. The Vietnam War protests, the advance of civil rights, the school desegregation work were at the top of the headlines. In that difficult time, Mr. Marland teamed up with this wonderful young creator of media at Sesame Workshop, Joan Ganz Cooney, to support the development of a new program called the Electric Company. Just 3 years earlier, Mrs. Cooney and her colleagues took the nation by storm with Sesame Street, which was on the cover of Time magazine and Newsweek within 6 months. And because of the really brave support during that tumultuous time, money was scarce, conflict was rife. So the brave support of the Office of Education alongside Carnegie Corporation and Ford Foundation, a new media industry, as Sid has suggested, was born. Their efforts, a few people's efforts, helped to revolutionize, I think, how children learn and play. So today, for the first time, here in Lancaster, for the first time in Pennsylvania, I want to show you all a special rare clip that shows the debate that was going on during that time, you have to understand that time, on how to craft Sesame Street, and that went on behind the scenes. So the world would never be the same. Let's watch.
But we ought to say something about the show, telling it like it is. Maybe the nitty-gritty little kitty show.
I like that. Well, then how about the itty-bitty nitty-gritty little kitty show? Hey, these kids can't read or write, can they?
No.
Then how's about we call the show Hey Stupid?
You really think you're going to get this show on the air?
Introducing a new television series for children.
Tape is rolling. Quiet, please.
Look right in there, Bert.
In there?
See right in there? Yeah, look a little closer.
11, 12.
C is for cookie, that's good enough for me.
Rubber ducky, you're the one.
Doing the pigeon.
Over and under and through.
I'm the king of 8, and I'm here to state that everything here has to total 8.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The ladybugs came to the ladybugs picnic.
Have a rotten day.
Yeah? Wow. Diggle's my kind of guy.
Genius, right? And here's the original cast from the workshop. Really interesting stories about the original cast. Do any of you know that Sesame Street was banned in Mississippi? It was. It was too diverse. They said too urban. But, you know, what was that code for? Really interesting. So 3 years later, the workshop created a wonderful new program focused on early reading remediation for struggling students called the Electric Company. It actually came back about 5 years ago in its latest iteration. The sketch comedy and the riffs by soon-to-be better-known celebrities such as Bill Cosby, Morgan Freeman, Rita Moreno became legendary. And the program established a national priority still all too relevant today. Patrick, one of the reasons why your new initiative is still very relevant, for ensuring that all children learn to read early and gain the capacity later to read to learn. So fast forward some 40 years, and thanks for the intro, Sid, with the advent of new digital technologies and all these new devices influencing kids everywhere, a new institution was born, brought again to fruition by Mrs. Cooney, that pioneer, and Sesame Workshop, which focused on learning with all the new media tools that children love. This is, I don't know who that guy is in the middle. Younger guy, yeah. So to help unlock the potential of digital media, here's our mission. We're focusing at the Cooney Center primarily on children in the preschool and elementary school age period, as these are the years of extraordinary promise. And we're maintaining Joan Ganz Cooney's original mission to find solutions for underserved children and to link the learning that goes on at home, as Sid suggested, with what is expected in school. Our goals are straightforward. We seek to unlock media's potential. We're challenging producers to do a whole lot better job of producing and using these new tools. And we really seek to mobilize practitioners and policymakers to invest in and to scale up that which works. We do these things through a variety of activities. I won't get into all of them, but we support our own and others' research through a fund that we have and fellows. We write reports and develop information tools. We create prototypes. We give advice to parents and teachers about what products and models will serve children well. And we like to convene leaders such as yourselves who are in the position to improve the educational landscape for young children. But in my presentation today, I want to go beyond the workshops and the center's rich history and unquestioned pedigree to explore some trends that are increasingly complex and, in fact, controversial. This afternoon, I will explore a new frontier that's changing most families' lives, a modernization of communications and play that technology advocates sometimes overreach and claim can help children fly to new places. The new frontier is, in truth, quite a bit more complicated for the people who matter most in kids' lives, many of you who are parents or who are teachers, who are educators. The real trade-offs which exist in a fast-paced digital background seem to be on every concerned adult's mind. In looking at these trade-offs and trends, we do at the Cooney Center have a theory that we're building on. In our work at the center, we take an ecological perspective, which means we try to take into account all of the environmental factors that may shape a child's interactions with media. This is kind of like a slide from my dissertation, slide number 141. But it's actually something that we take very seriously at the center. But as Bob Dylan sang, the times they're changing. Due to the tech revolution, globalization, evolving demographics, the family's been transformed, many of you know, in the past 3 decades, and more recently changing in ways that have real consequences for the healthy development of children. Here are some major trends that we're observing in the US and around the globe. I mean, here in Lancaster and in many other parts of the US, millions of families are stressed out. The global economic downturn means that more families are making do with less. Parents paid hourly wages must work overtime to make ends meet. The sad fact is that parents are spending fewer waking hours with their children. And this phenomenon is not just concentrated among low-income families. Let me just be clear about that. This phenomenon cuts across sectors in different ways, but certainly this is an attribute of the modern age. Even parents who are better off are stressed by work, other factors that shape the quality of the time they're spending with their children. I think this slide indicates that. Children these days tend to spend time in many places, in childcare, at a neighbor's, after-school centers. Many split their weeks between 2 parents or with extended families. You all know this. Many are being raised by grandparents. In the US, did you know over 2 million elders have primary child-rearing responsibilities? Sorry about that. Although, did you know that the average age of a grandparent is, anybody know? 47 years old. Yeah, it's true. Check out ARP. Yeah, it's surprising. Finally, there's a deluge of media, often resulting in overstimulation and too little sleep. Some educators and physicians are concerned that the ubiquity of screen time has created an epidemic of media multitasking. The result, a fall-off in the deeper learning time and diverted attention. This slide shows that media consumption and the volume of media consumption is truly alarming to many concerned adults. School-age children's media exposure on a daily basis is up over 2 hours on average in the past 5 to 6 years. Kids are, believe it or not, spending more time with media than they are in school. Right? Does that sound possible? It's true. And these data are only about the amount of time they spend outside of school from the Kaiser Family Foundation. These trends have real-life consequences. Although we have not established the cause yet, it's clear that heavy media users do more poorly at school, are less happy, are more bored with their educational choices. They also do tend to get into more trouble. And increasingly young children are mimicking their older siblings and peers. According to Common Sense Media, the average 4-year-old will be consuming about 3 hours of media today. But let's not get totally depressed. In spite of the worrisome trends, technology offers fresh new learning paradigms supported by connectivity, mobility, and participation. Kids today have greater opportunities than ever before through social and mobile networks, anytime, anywhere learning opportunities, and through their own participation, their own authoring tools, to name just 3, than we've ever had before to allow them to build the skills needed to compete and cooperate in our global age. To take a closer look at the new media environment, including what parents see as unique possibilities of a digital age, the Center just completed this report. A new study focused on learning at home, because we think what parents do with their children is fundamental to their pathway to success. One key purpose of this study was to measure how much of children's screen time is devoted to educational content and to look at how that varies across platforms. We then wanted to see if there were differences by age, gender, or socioeconomic status. Another purpose was to look in detail at which platforms parents think their children are learning from the most and about which subjects they're learning the most about. We also wanted to measure what we call, as research scientists, joint media engagement, or co-viewing, the degree to which parents and children are using and watching media together, and to document patterns of reading and the transition from print reading to digital reading on e-book devices. We were particularly interested in measuring what portion of children's media use is educational, or at least how parents defined that use. Of course, there's a lot of room for differences of opinion when it comes to deciding which content is or isn't educational. In this study, we gave parents a definition of educational media, which was, quote, media that is good for your child's learning or growth, or that teaches some type of a lesson, such as an academic or a social skill. It's obviously a very broad definition, so parents may very well, over or undercount how much of their children's screen time is defined as educational. So let me give you a sense of how these parents assess the educational content of some familiar properties, so you have a feeling for what they do and don't consider educational. This slide shows the percent of parents who say each TV show is very educational. It looks like they're kind of on the mark, since Sesame Street is pretty educational. So they were asked, what's very educational? You can see the majority think Sesame Street is very educational, but it's not everyone. Yeah, most people thought it was somewhat educational anyway. So these aren't a bunch of pushover parents we're dealing with here. About a third for Dora, 1 in 4 says Mickey is very educational, and 2% think SpongeBob is. I think it was my parents. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how parents' views may conform or differ to your own, and you can keep that in mind as we look through all the findings from the study. By the way, this study was just released in late January, so these are very fresh data. We talked to about 1,600 parents of children ages 2 to 10. I want to start by saying that there's a lot of good news for those who believe that the educational media community is doing a decent job, starting with the fact that a large proportion of 2 to 10-year-olds are frequent users of educational media. A total of 80% use it at least once a week or more, including about a third who use educational media more times a day, every day. So a large audience is being reached on a fairly consistent basis. Another good piece of news is that parents tell us their children are in fact learning from educational media. So among parents whose kids are weekly users, these are the percentages arrayed beginning with cognitive skills and all the way down to more than one subject, who say their children has learned about each subject, and this only includes those who said their children learned a lot. So we're setting a pretty high bar here. As you can see, according to their parents, kids are most likely to learn about cognitive skills, reading and math, and less about some of the other subjects such as science, which we'll come back to later. It's interesting that fewer parents said their child had learned about science compared to some of the other subject areas. All told, more than half have learned a lot about at least one subject. Another piece of good news is that many parents report that their children are extending their learning. These are actions taken due to educational media use. So they're doing things like talking about something that they saw or engaging in imaginative play. As you can see, a total of 54% of weekly educational media users take one or more of these really important interactions on more than a daily basis. Now for some of the less good news for those who are involved in the media business and those who care about children. The first item, not a huge surprise to anyone in this field, the proportion of children's screen time that is devoted to educational content drops way off once kids are out of the 2 to 4 year old range. You can see on the slide what I just clicked on that about 80% of the screen time for the children in the preschool are devoted to educational use, and it goes all the way down among the 8 to 10-year-olds to just 1 in 4, just 27% of the screen time. So maybe some of you were thinking, I bet parents are way overestimating how much of their children's media is educational. Was anybody thinking that? Well, and if that's the case, then we really have an issue with the older kids, right? But the proportion of that screen media use that is educational goes down a lot, resulting in this net decrease in time spent with educational media. The other finding that stood out a bit as a bit of a challenge is that mobile, shown on this slide, is lagging pretty far behind TV. Does this surprise anybody? It's just not happening in terms of the parents' perceptions yet. That mobile just hasn't arrived. So maybe they're using mobile frequently, but they're not using it for educational purposes, according to the parents. First of all, a smaller proportion of the kids, the time kids spend with mobile is devoted to content their parents consider educational. And again, parents may or may not have an accurate assessment of that. It sure is more difficult to map and track what your kid is doing on a mobile device as opposed to a TV show that you know is a half an hour long. But in their view, in any case, about a third of their kids' mobile use is educational compared to about half of their use on television. The result is that children spend much less time with educational content on mobile devices than they do with educational TV. The average across all kids is 5 minutes a day with educational content on mobile platforms compared to 42 minutes a day of educational TV. And the other way we're seeing mobile lag behind is that even parents whose kids are using educational content on mobile platforms on a regular basis are less likely to say that their kids have learned a lot from it than from other platforms such as TV or computers or video games. So even among parents whose kids use educational content on mobile devices at least weekly, they're far less likely to attribute learning to that activity than to TV. Again, we don't know if kids are actually learning less from mobile than from TV. We just know that that's what their parents believe. Another finding that I found very interesting, that a lot of you who are parents or educators in the audience will too, I think, it poses a bit of a challenge to our community. It's represented on this slide. How are parents finding the educational media their children use? And you can see the different ways in this chart. I guess what leaps out to me is that it doesn't seem to be a very intentional process. It's very heartening to see that the suggestions from teachers, about 40% get suggestions from teachers, are a great source for parents. But it's a little disappointing, I would say, maybe it's because I'm an expert in this field, so I should buck it up, to see that only 20% say they're using resources like online reviews and recommendations, since we like to think of parents as making informed decisions, and maybe there's a bit less of that going on than we would otherwise prefer. Another interesting aspect of the findings concerns socioeconomic status, an important issue for the educational media community, at least the nonprofit wing of the educational media community, such as organizations like Sesame Street, is that there are still a lot of lower income kids who do not have access to many of the platforms on which we deliver educational content to them. This is a big takeaway for us. TV is still king, especially among low income households. It's moving, but we've got to keep this in mind. By the way, this includes even cable TV, where it's almost a 50-50 split as to who does or doesn't have it among lower income families. And the same with high-speed internet access and smartphones for those trying to deliver digital content online via mobile. And tablets, which make such a lovely platform, as many of you know, for educational content, at this point in time are missing 3/4 of the lowest income children. On the other hand, lower income kids still use educational media more frequently, TV primarily, than higher income children do, DVDs as well. This chart shows a percentage of kids who are daily users of educational media, whatever the platform, they use it each and every day. And the lower income children are far more likely at 43% on this chart to be daily users than the higher income kids at 25%. So even with the challenges in access, the community is making greater use of educational media than privileged groups are, who may have more options for enriching their educational programs at their disposal. Part of what's going on here then is that lower income children simply spend more time, you can see on the left-hand side, with all types of screen media than higher income kids do, almost an hour a day more. So it's incumbent upon us to think about that hour a day more. We need to figure out ways to program that hour in a special way. But also lower income parents are more likely than higher income parents to label the same content as educational. So maybe we're doing a good job of reaching kids most in need, or maybe, just maybe, and I fear, their parents are just being a little more accommodating in their assessments of what's educational. This chart shows the differences in how parents rate the educational value of various TV shows. But also, lower income parents are more likely than higher income parents to label the same content as educational. So that's what I said before. So, and next, there were a couple of intriguing findings when we looked at the data by race and ethnicity. You can take a look at the different shows here on the left-hand side. When we ask parents how much their children have actually learned from educational media, there's really an interesting split here. Across almost every subject area and platform, this is really interesting, folks. The black parents were the most likely, and the Hispanic parents were the least likely to say their child had learned from media. One example I'll throw up here is the percent who say their child has learned a lot or some about math from the computer. Look at this. Among those who say, who use it weekly for educational purposes, you can see it's a fairly substantial difference. 63% for Hispanics. Here. 63% for Hispanics, 79% for whites, and 97% for blacks. And at the same time, the Hispanic Latino parents are more likely, 74%, right, than others to say they would like to have more information about how to find high-quality educational media products for the kids, and by a pretty large margin, especially compared to white parents. We can discuss during our Q&A why that might be the case. Quickly, I just speculate that we are not, as media producers, creating really good shows for language minority kids, parents who are teaching their ELL students how to speak English, and also we're not connecting to some of the subcultural variations among Hispanic and Latino families with the content and the characters that we're developing. Okay, the last two topics from this recent survey, joint media engagement or co-viewing, and e-reading. There are many in our community who, let me go back to the, one second, where's the joint media engagement? I'll go to co-reading. There are many in our community who believe that having parents and kids use media together in an active, engaged manner yields better educational results for the child than if they use it alone, and that makes good inherent sense. You don't need researchers to tell you that. One of the things we did was to measure how much of the children's screen time is spent watching or playing with a parent. About half of TV time is spent with parents co-viewing, compared to closer to a quarter of the time for other platforms. Finally, e-reading. How many of you have an e-reader device at home? And how many of you have young children who you permit to use your e-reader device? Fewer than those who have it. So we wanted to actually document how much time kids are spending reading on electronic devices versus in print. And you can see the results among all 2 to 10-year-olds in this chart. An average of 5 minutes a day for electronic, compared to almost half an hour a day for print. Not a surprise. Of course, part of this disparity is because a lot of kids still don't have an electronic reading platform or device. Our survey found that roughly a third of kids do not have an e-reading device. A third one do have it and use it, and a third have one but don't use it. This chart shows why parents say that the latter group doesn't use it. Some say their child is simply too young. Others simply prefer print and think it's a better screen for their child or a more intimate learning environment. And many parents just don't want to deal with what some described as an intimidating environment. So many choices, so little information on what is good and wholesome. It's all, frankly, pretty daunting. Okay, so those are the results. And for far too many parents who we talk to and who we talk to outside of this survey, the current media environment feels a little bit like the Wild West. All of us here today realize the untapped potential that digital media can have for learning. Here in the US, our vision is trained always on a new frontier, right? What was once called manifest destiny, for better and for worse, is still very much a part of the American dream, and I think an important engine for creativity. In the 1960s, JFK looked upward towards space. He promised to put the first man on the moon, and we did it. Sid Marlin, Joan, Ganz, Cooney, they invented iconic, revolutionary media experiments. Just a few people that are still broadly influential. This mindset drives the current explosion of innovation in interactive media. But the digital learning landscape, most of which is less than, think about this, less than a decade old. The iPad is less than 4 years old. The interactive touchscreen in mass circulation is less than 7 years old. And until these new devices and these new platforms are better explored, understood, and tamed, parents and teachers won't feel confident enough to let young children take full advantage. For now, many parents and educators are keeping their children close to the homestead, so to speak. Parents and teachers are, to be frank, ambivalent, right? I mean, I'm ambivalent about the new technologies. Our work and personal lives, of course, have been transformed. The internet, mobile phones, e-readers, social networking, the list goes on. These have sometimes stressed us out, but let's be frank, they've improved communication, productivity, entertainment, learning for adults. Why is it that so many parents who own e-readers, though, won't allow their preschool-age kids to use them? Well, they're smart. They have a different point of view. This phenomenon is all over, as this slide shows, the US and the United Kingdom. So we decided to test just how pervasive the ambivalent sentiments were. In another survey, which I won't spend much time on today, we spoke to parents who exclusively had e-readers. And we released a study earlier this year. 37% of them, which is close to the percentage that we found in the most recent survey, 37% prohibit their young children from reading ebooks. Even more said that they just weren't impressed with the selection of digital media that were available. We see similar ambivalence among teachers, right? In a 2011 survey commissioned by PBS, researchers found strong belief among teachers that technology benefits their teaching. And yet, another survey, you can't trust researchers who are always finding different results, another survey of teachers found that they blame video games and texting as a key cause for students' lack of focus and lesson skills. Here at Millerville, just go into any professor's class, and I'm sure they will complain that the kids are not paying attention. This ambivalence towards technology from both parents and teachers may explain why there is still such a moat. See the bottom of this? That's a moat. Between what children experience at school and what they experience at home. There's a disconnect going on. There's the rich fantasy life, the engaging wonderfulness of digital media, and then there's that place called school that feels like it did about 200 years ago. In many places, not here in Lancaster. So to succeed in the future, we can't keep pointing fingers. To get on the right path, young children have to urgently explore. This is my mission. Just as Lewis and Clark did for settlers in the US, the Cooney Center and our colleagues at other organizations, including New America Foundation, have begun to map the digital learning landscape for parents, teachers, and other early educators. So in another report issued last winter, we're busy. There's about 6 of us, by the way. We decided to take a close look at perhaps the wildest territories of all, the apps marketplace. To make an understatement, it is booming. How many of you in the last 2 days have made an apps purchase? Anybody? Few people. In the last month? More, yeah. So look at this growth in apps from 2008, when the iTunes store opened, to just 5 years later. The most recent numbers show that there are about 750,000 active apps available to buy or install. Tens of thousands of those apps label themselves educational or for children. Games and education are the top 2 categories in several mobile marketplaces. In the education category, children are a big target, almost 3/4 target preschoolers. Does that surprise you? It's interesting. Unfortunately, and I wish I had better news here, the vast majority of these learning apps for children are drill and kill. They're basic skills. Nothing wrong with that, but they're missing critical learning opportunities and critical learning needs. Few focus on vocabulary, comprehension, or the story building skills, or the computational skills that can build strong literacy and math capabilities for a lifetime. To promote such capabilities, centers doing research on intergenerational play, the powerful learning together moments that I alluded to earlier, when children develop both emotional strength and activate critical pathways and connections in their brains. We're tracking what the renderings in this slide represent, the potential of joint engagement with and through media. So, like Lewis and Clark, my favorite explorers, I should have come up with some Eastern explorers, I suppose. Some educators and media creators have a vision of a new frontier. Here, Sesame Workshop is offering new scouts, Elmo and Cookie. We're not focused on understanding every new gadget or game or app to hit the scene. That would, of course, be impossible. Rather, new pioneers are designing a new map, one in which there is no disconnect, attention educators, between home, school, and the other places children spend time. We can design, I think, a continuous experience, as John Dewey would have said, that will enable deeper learning. The key gatekeepers in children's lives must join forces so that kids move seamlessly across settings. Children will no longer see learning as the norm in one place or fun just situated in others. Learning and fun will occur, and the fun will be harder across one continuous ecosystem. Maybe this is our generation's manifest destiny, to prepare our kids to improve their chances to compete and cooperate in our digital and global age. So, whatever it's called, to realize a new vision in the digital Wild West, we need to enlist the cooperation of educators, developers, parents, policymakers, and philanthropy. All the groups that community institutions like the United Way here and the Community Foundation and the Hourglass Foundation and others are in great position to convene. Here are 5 steps that could help your community and others do some serious homesteading in the next 5 years. First, we must connect parents and teachers to build a bridge across this moat. It's really urgent. And modern communications technologies are making that easier. We can make progress by sharing real-time data every day or every week on how kids are doing, providing richer guidance on what constitutes media quality choices. You saw from our research, parents believe that teachers and educators are among their best guides. We need to better deploy the free, taxpayer-supported educational media made by organizations like Sesame Street and PBS in schools as well as in communities, not just in homes. We need your expertise to embed our resources more productively so that they don't disappear into the ether. Second, we need educators and policymakers to lead a robust public discussion, which I hope we'll begin to get into this evening, about the potential of educational media and new technologies. We shouldn't shrink from the public health concerns associated with overconsumption. You saw it, it's stark. There is overconsumption. But, and there is inappropriate content, but we need to reframe the conversation around modernization. Every other sector is deploying technology to expand productivity, to incent creativity. We need public support so early education programs can break out of their current time warp. Third, and in this vein, we need to figure out how to learn sharp lessons from exhilarating experimentation all across the world. We're connected globally now, you folks. You know this. From Sugata Mitri's hole-in-the-wall experiment that's teaching primary school children about technology in rural India. He just left technology in open hole and let the kids self-organize. It's amazing what happened. To the Pittsburgh Digital Learning Hive. Any of you know about that? It's an amazing array led by the Pittsburgh Foundations and the Pittsburgh's mayor to connect kids through digital technologies. To all the different digital learning centers that are taking place and taking off in other parts of the world and other parts of the country. Fourth, and this is also just critical, let's stop blaming teachers for everything that is a bad outcome for our kids. It's ridiculous. So when we introduce rich technology, let us cast a spell on any organization that just gives technology to schools and doesn't include serious professional development. We need to invest in teachers' own mastery of the new digital tools. Educators can't teach with new tools that they themselves don't know. So the Cooney Center is working with national and community leaders, and you will have your own solutions, I'm sure, that are better than this, to establish a digital teacher corps comprised of literacy teachers, librarians, tech-savvy specialists who are privy to the most sophisticated uses of games, mobile, and social media. Together, they'll help address the reading crisis that tragically saps millions of young children's potential in the United States. And finally, we're in a backwards pattern on research and development. On the development side, our children are living in a tech environment that resembles a future age, right? Star Wars or a cartoon world conjuring images of the Jetsons. On the research side, our knowledge resembles that of a wagon train frontiersman, or maybe the Flintstones. We simply don't have enough usable information for parents and educators and other concerned adults to make key decisions about what works best for whom and what constitutes high-quality experiences in different settings. We need to invest more in careful longitudinal studies, but also in quick studies that will allow educators to play an essential role in designing the right inquiries. So this is my own 21st century guide to help parents and educators, the people who still matter most. Let us just reiterate that. Technology is not a replacement for responsible parenting, informed parenting, for excellent, high-quality teaching. It's not going to get us there. But the people who still matter most to young children must be given the wherewithal to make the difficult but necessary transition from what I have described as the digital Wild West to this new frontier. I think one that hopefully can deliver on technology's enormous but as yet untapped promise. We need to start right now. And make no mistake, the first step is to organize a modern-day army, one that will definitely need to be a whole lot more diverse, include some women if we want to get something done, and a whole lot more friendly than this motley crew. We need tech and relationship-savvy parents, dynamic educators and health professionals, bold community leaders, and risk-taking business folks to realize a new vision for a shared future. You guys have what it takes here in Lancaster to develop a community where every young child can engage with a world that is more exciting and wider than ever before. Thank you so much for listening.